Good evening and welcome to the opening round of the RaceDepartment Grand Prix Championship here from Hockenheim. My name is Peter Lee and joining me for all the race action is Jeremy Brewer. Hello Jeremy.
Good evening.
Good evening, and the drivers are currently lapping in qualifying. We've got 20 minutes on the clock with private qualifying, so the first drivers making the way out onto the starting grid for what will be certainly an exciting qualifying. At the pre-season qualifying round at Interlagos, we had the top 21 separated by a second, which gives you some indication of how close this field is, so we can expect much of the same here, I'd expect, Jeremy.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to see some nice tight racing today.
Yeah, especially with these Formula 3 cars, the F309 we're using today, which are identical in performance. So the first drivers now starting their hot laps here. So put it on private qualifying just because any lag that happens, drivers won't get interrupted on their laps, and also any slipstream that may be gained from drivers they won't be able to gain any slipstream from other drivers. So what do you think is going to be key to a hot lap here today, Jeremy?
Well, first, we already have great track conditions today. Beautiful 20 degrees C out. Track is sitting at 25, just short of 26 degrees C, so it's a decent track temperatures. Really, I think it's going to be down to these guys just hitting their marks and whether or not how they've got enough practice in to really put in some fast times. Watching practice, there was not much in it between even the top 3 guys or even the top 10 as far as practice laps. So I foresee some very close qualifying laps here.
Yes, I'd say so too, especially Interlagos, as I said, the top 21 separated by a second, so kind of gives you an idea of how close it was. Ferdinand Lechner then puts his mighty 4th car onto original pole 132.0, currently 2 seconds faster than everyone else, but I suspect that won't stay the same for the entire session as we see the drivers make their way round. And this circuit here today, Hockenheim, of course, world famous and world renowned as one of the best in the world, arguably not as good as it used to be, but we won't go there. But certainly a circuit that will test the drivers, and especially with 60 laps of racing around here, so it's not a short race by any means. It's going to really test the drivers here for 90 minutes of action. So Ferdinand Lechner, he was quickest at the pre-season qualifying at Spielberg, but then at Interlagos he was slightly slower. He qualified down in 8th position, but won the race, so it's evident that he's got good pace. And do you think he's going to be the man to beat for tonight?
Possibly. I think it's a little too early on to really place my bets on anyone today, especially after seeing the practice and, as you said, with Interlagos, how close everybody was. I think it may be a little early for me to place bets.
Yes, I think especially given the length of the race, as well as I said, 60 laps as well as a pit stop, it's going to be very difficult for the drivers to maintain their concentration for this length of race. It's virtually like an endurance stint that they're going to have to do today, around 90 minutes of racing. So 131.863 for Ferdinand Lechner, currently on pole position, provisionally ahead of Matt Legale and Dan Long, with Andre Felisberto and Alan Roloff-Groff rounding out the top 5. One of the quick drivers from Interlagos was Dan O'Neill. He's currently in 13th position, but I'd expect him to go quicker as well. So have you managed to test out? Have you seen how long the stints will be today, Jeremy?
I have not, and that's actually one of the things I'm quite interested in today. As you said, this is a fairly long race, and seeing the strategy that's going to come into play here, because we know they're going to have to do at least one pit stop based on fuel alone. So it's going to be interesting to see whether they do a single stop or if guys are going to do multiple stops to swap out tires, or how they're going to work it. It's going to be very interesting to see the strategy play out here today.
Yes, I'd agree with that, especially the 1-stop versus 2-stop debate. With 60 laps on the cars, you'd think after 30 the tyres would be pretty wrecked, so you might be losing more time by just going round slower than coming in and changing onto a fresher set. So one of the things
and especially with Hockenheim, we do have some very high-speed corners. They are going to be scrubbing their tires quite a bit, putting in some really fast laps and battling each other. So it'll be, the tire strategy is really going to come into play, I think.
Yes, and added to that, the long straight through the parabolic run up to the hairpin will provide some awesome slipstreaming battles, I suspect, with these cars. Of course, very aerodynamic, but when you're behind someone, you know, the tow is unbelievable. So I'd expect a lot of battling. Even if you're not the quickest driver, you may, with a bit of racecraft, be able to get near the front. So we may see some surprises from drivers who maybe aren't as quick on one lap, but over a couple of laps and through racecraft can get up from near the front. But we have just 13 minutes remaining on the clock here at the moment. Still, the 1:31.8 puts Ferdinand Lechner on pole position from Matt Legale, but David Junt has come forward to third position, Lechner's teammate. So another driver from that team coming forward. We've got 4 in that team, I believe, in the mighty 4th team. So a large team there, and really will be a force to be reckoned with. We've got the blue and the red cars, so separated it into 2 teams, and it's the blue car on top at the moment from the mighty 4th team. 4th position is Craig Patterson, who I believe early in the week was having some PC issues, so it's good to see him out there racing in the Williams liveried car, racing for Races in Pyjamas. And in 5th position is Johnny Staforos, who's racing for Hellenic Racing Association. Himself and Manos Papanglou make up an all-Greek team there, so they'll be interesting to see. 5th and 7th currently, and then in 6th position we have, sandwiched in between them, we have Matt Beavis, who's the first of the MK Simsport cars, and he is driving alongside Dan Long, who sits in 8th currently. We Races Andre Felisberto is currently in 9th position from Bart Zwierink, who rounds out the top 10. But we're seeing at the moment that a big gap from 1st to 2nd, and then very close further back from, well, for the rest of the field. And do you think that's going to be how it is at the end, or do you think there's still some drivers yet to put in their hot laps, Jeremy?
Yeah, I'm not real sure. It definitely seems that Ferdinand has turned on the rocket boosters, if you will, and has kind of pulled away from everybody. We're looking at just under a 1.5 second gap between 1st and 2nd place here, and then, as you said, everybody else behind that is very close, pretty much all the way through the rest of the field, separated by less than a second. So it'll be interesting to see. I'm not sure if maybe Ferdinand was able to find some sudden speed, or if everybody's just kind of getting into the groove here. But if that's the case, they should probably find the groove pretty quick. We're getting a little short on qualifying time here, down to 11 minutes now. Yes, nearly halfway through the session already. So interesting to see that drivers still yet to put in their laps. But of course, in Automobilista, the track also develops over time as well. The racing line develops dynamically, and therefore we'll see higher track grip later in the session, and that might be what drivers are focusing on as well. Or maybe drivers who didn't quite get some time in practice, putting some last minute changes into the setup and still working with the setup to get a better lap. But you can see a lot of drivers putting in quicker lap times now, and really that middle part of the field is very close. Dan Long and Craig Patterson now 5th and 6th for Races in Pyjamas, just 200 separating them, so very close together in terms of lap time for those two. But one of the topics I'd like to cover quickly is track limits, because we are letting Automobilista decide track limits for the race control, but we'll also be monitoring a little bit in race control as well in addition to that. And especially at turn 1, the Nord curve, that's a very easy place to run wide. So do you think we're going to get a lot of penalties in this race for track limits, or a lot of warnings, Jeremy? I think so, yes. With how competitive this field is, especially as you said, looking at guys putting in the faster times, they are getting very close. We have a couple of drivers that are separated by hundreds of seconds. These guys are going to be pushing very, very hard today. So I do foresee us seeing quite a few warnings, especially as you said at Nord Curb there, because it is very easy to go wide there.
Yes, and these cars are susceptible to running wide, especially off curbs when you hit a curb wrong, especially at Nord Curb, because it's quite a tight curb there. It's just literally a right-angled curve with a sausage on the top of it, I believe. So it's going to be very difficult.
And as you said, how much these cars rely on aerodynamics, you know, following somebody and being in that dirty air is going to affect them as well. And they'll have to keep that in mind when they are following someone so close.
Yes, also true. The dirty air, of course, will come into effect as the drivers round the circuit. And, as you said, a few quick corners here on this circuit, especially down there at Mobile 1, turn 11, just before they come into the stadium section. That's one of the corners where I think we'll see a lot of dirty air come into effect. And running wide there really is, really can hamper your race a lot because of the grass on the outside. And it's also easy to do at the final two corners as well, just running onto what is a drag strip here. So with 7.5 minutes to go, Matt Legale's putting a quicker lap there. He's gone just over a second behind our current pole sitter Ferdinand Lechner. And Matt looking good there in the LG racing car. Steve Legale is also on circuit, currently sitting 25th here in the fellow LG Motorsport car. David Yunt dropped out to third position. Rodrigo Cascais has come up the field to fourth in We Race car. His teammate Andre Felisberto is currently in sixth position. And the other thing to consider here, as well as the Drivers' Championship, is the Teams' Championship. So you've got two very quick drivers. You could see a very hot Teams' Championship, especially because in the top six I'm seeing three different teams that have all got both drivers in that top six. So it's going to be interesting as well in the Teams' Championship, Jeremy.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of these teams have definitely put together a very fast group of guys. It's not just a single individual out there that's putting in some really fast times. As you said, we've got a couple teams now that have guys up there in the field as far as qualifying goes. So the team championship is also going to be pretty interesting.
Yes, and with all the points on the table here, it's going to be interesting to see what we can come up with at the end of the 60 laps. And of course, with the fatigue that will take place as well in those 60 laps, you can't imagine that drivers will be able to run 1:33s all the way through the race. So, especially considering they'll probably be on qualifying fuel at the moment. So, definitely come race, we'll see slower lap times and maybe some mistakes come into play. And of course, so I think a very interesting setup though we've got here today with the Formula 3 and really giving a new chapter to the RDGPC. We ran IndyCar style cars last year, and now we've got the Formula 3s as David Yunt goes up to second for Mighty Fourth. He's just spun at turn 1, so obviously trying even harder for a quick lap, but now Mighty Fourth 1-2, and they look like the team to beat here even before we've started the first race, Jeremy.
Yeah, absolutely. The two of them, at least provisionally securing the front row, obviously going to be a team to reckon with here today. And as was pointed out in chat, you know, we have just a little over 3.5 seconds separating the entirety of the field right now in qualifying trim, which is very impressive and goes to show not only the skill but the competitiveness of this field that we have here today. It's very impressive.
Yeah, and in addition to that, you can just look down the field and look down the timing and see just how close they are. I mean, 10th to 14th, there's just a tenth and a half separating them at 1.806, sorry, 33.670, 33.744, 33.780, 33.830, 33.858. You know, just a tenth and a half separating 5 or 6 drivers. And I think even if we don't get a battle at the front, we'll get a battle further down the field, 200 separating second and third.
Yeah, and we have you know, just under, or basically a second gap between third place and 15th at this point, and really 16th now. So more than half of the field is separated by less than a second right now. And as I was saying that, we are still seeing some guys putting in a little bit faster laps. So this is going to get mixed up even more so in the final 4 minutes here.
Yes, just under 4 minutes remaining on the timing screens as we come into the closing stages of qualifying for round 1 of the RaceDepartment Grand Prix Championship here at Hockenheim. And on the subject of close drivers, of course, with half a tenth you could go up 2 or 3 places and really could change your race, as Matt Legale puts in an even faster lap to go second and goes just over a second behind Ferdinand Lechner. I'm just trying to see where Ferdinand is making up that time. It seems like an overall he seems to be making up a lot of time in sector 2 and also sector 3, the twistier sections. So perhaps a car more geared towards handling could be
yeah, he may be running a little more downforce than the other guys. I mean, low downforce would seem, fairly smart given the Parabolica section and so on. But there is some very tight, twisty, turny sections of this track, and maybe he threw a little bit more wing on it, and that's where he's finding the speed. Because as you said, sector 2 and 3 there is where he's quicker, and currently still holds a 1 second gap to Matt Legale's.
Yes, and you'd think with that setup there, perhaps harder on tyres as well with the more increased downforce, so you'd maybe suggest he's going for 2-stop strategy perhaps.
That is a good possibility. Maybe he's looking at, keeping that second a lap gap and trying to push very hard at the start and get him a good gap going, break away from the rest of the field and do 2 stops and see if that works out for him. Again, it's going to be very interesting to see the pit stop strategy at work here today.
Yes, and in addition to that, as with real racing, we do have a virtual safety car here in play today, so for any incidents that do crop up throughout the 60 laps, we'll neutralise the field, which will put another curveball into it. Of course, if you come towards your pit stop and then a virtual safety car comes out, you can't pit during a virtual safety car, so I don't believe so. So that will mean you have to stay out for a few laps longer, and if a virtual safety car comes out just as you're about to pit and you've got a lap or 2 left of fuel, you're going to have to really manage that fuel for the extra lap that you might have to do. So just another aspect that these drivers will have to think about here. We've got just under a minute and a half remaining on the clock. Ferdinand Lechner is our current provisional pole sitter from Matt Legale. David Yunt, the Mighty Fourth Racing number 2 team there with the red cars and the blue cars, of course, sits the head of row 2 with Rodrigo Cascais in 4th position. 5th is Bart Zwering ahead of Dan O'Neill, who scored pole position at the pre-season opener at Interlagos. Matt Beavis is currently in 7th position ahead of O'Neill's teammate Craig Patterson. Andre Felisberto is currently sitting in, well, I was going to say 9th, but he's now in 7th position as he improves by a 10th and goes up 2 positions. So, as we were saying, very close here in the closing stages of qualifying, so he puts himself ahead of Matt Beavis and Craig Patterson. And rounding out the top 10 is Oliver Louise, who is just 1.8 seconds off the lead and only 7/10 off 2nd place as we head into the final few seconds of qualifying. So, closing thoughts here from qualifying. Is this the grid you were expecting, Jeremy, or were you expecting a slightly closer field, especially at the top?
To be honest, I was expecting slightly closer, but really, in actuality, when you look at it, there's not much of a gap there. Even a 1 second gap between first and second is pretty short, and all the way down the field, we're only looking at a maximum of a 4 second gap, or a little over 4 seconds. So I did expect it to be a little bit closer, but nonetheless, I still believe this is going to be very close racing today. And very quickly to also mention, as race control did let us know, the guys are allowed to pit under a virtual safety car. They are not allowed to serve penalties, however, under a virtual safety car, which we do have a couple of pre-race penalties that were issued from Interlagos during the qualifying, if you will. So there are a couple teams that will be serving grid penalties today.
Yes, my mistake. They are allowed to serve pit stops, but not penalties. And we do have, as Jeremy correctly said, we do have a number of drivers who we'll be getting grid penalties at the start of the race, and should drivers jump the start or run off track too many times, we will have penalties come into play then as well. But Ferdinand Lechner on pole position here for your race. We're going to have a quick break and then we'll be back for the race. Hello and welcome. Hello and welcome back to the Race Department Grand Prix Championship. My name is Peter Lee, and alongside me here for this 60-lap race is Jeremy Brewer. As the drivers head onto their formation lap here, it is Ferdinand Lechner who will start from pole position from Matt Legale. Lechner's teammate David Yunt will start on the head of row 2 ahead of Rodrigo Cascais, and Andre Filisberto, the two teammates for We Race, locked in 4th and 5th position. 6th position is Bart Zweering, who for White Knuckles Sim Racing ahead of Dan O'Neill for Races in Pyjamas. 8th is Matt Beavis for MK Simsport. 9th is Craig Patterson for Races in Pyjamas, Dan O'Neill's teammate. And 10th position is Oliver Louise, who's in for Kinker Racing, rounded out the top 10. As we mentioned in qualifying, there are a few drivers who need to serve, who had a 10 grid position penalty for this race. Those 5 drivers are number 26 Thomas Parsi, who will start 28th, number 99 Antonio Navarro, who I don't believe is here, Jean-Pierre Père, who starts in 25th position, Jeremy Moon, who will start in 29th position, and Ronnie Van Rouge, who will start in 27th position. So those are the 5 drivers that have been dropped back down 10 positions due to exceeding track limits in the pre-season events. However, for the rest of the drivers, we do have they will remain in their qualifying positions. So Ferdinand Lechner, the quickest driver in qualifying by some distance here. Jeremy, do you think he's just going to be able to run away with it, or do you think the drivers behind will have the race strategy and the race setup all worked out?
Well, it's a possibility, and as you said, there's a 1 second gap in between first and second, and with Ferdinand having his teammates so close, it's going to be interesting to see if we see them working together. If David is able to get by Matt Legales and possibly see some leapfrogging going between Ferdinand and David, as well as the pit strategy work into play. So it'll be interesting to see if they kind of just run away from the pack, if Ferdinand runs away from the pack, or if he tries to tow along David with him today.
Yes, they could work together here as they get ready here. The last few drivers lining up on the grid here in preparation for 60 laps of racing in the opening round of the Race Department Grand Prix Championship Season 6. Ferdinand Lechner lines up alongside Matt Legale on the front row as the lights come on, and in a few seconds they'll be going out, and we are green. A long hold there, but quickly away for Lechner. Legale gets another quick start, and 4th position Rodrigo Cascais comes alongside Legale into turn 1. He's going to have to back out of that one as he gets sideways through turn 1. The driver who's going to advantage from that is David Yunt as he moves up to 3rd position, but already Lechner with a few lengths as they go down into turn number 2. A number of drivers getting caught up together there in turn number 2, but it looks like we've all got through safely, just double checking. And yes, all drivers are through turn 2 and onto the parabolica safely. So as they go down towards the hairpin, it is Lechner who leads by 1.5 seconds from Matt Legale. David Yunt on the inside into the hairpin, but a clean start for Lechner, Jeremy.
Yes, absolutely, and we are starting to see that battle between David and Matt play out, and it looks like David is going to come out on top, at least for now. Now we'll see if he can link up with Ferdinand and start getting that teamwork into play, or Ferdinand is just going to run away from the entire pack. Right now we're looking at a 2-second gap between Ferdinand and the rest of the field.
Yes, a very nice gap at the start, 2.2 seconds it is as they head into the final sector of the lap. But the two mighty 4th cars, 1st and 2nd, 3rd position Matt Legale, 4th is Rodrigo Cascais, who couldn't quite get the benefit of that mega start, was boxed in at turn 1. Bart Zweering is in 5th position there, and 6th position Matt Beavis, 7th Andre Filisberto, 8th Craig Patterson, 9th Manis Papanglo, and 10th Dan O'Neill as they come round to complete lap number 1. So a few movers and shakers here, and we've got a driver off the circuit. That is Dan Long, who's gone off the circuit at the final corner. He rejoins in 14th position. but a few positions there, lost there. He comes back out in front of his teammate Tom Watts, but at the end of lap 1, a 3-second lead for Ferdinand Lechner, Jeremy.
Yeah, he has definitely found some speed over the rest of the field. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out, as we were talking about earlier with the pit strategy, whether he is going with a higher downforce setup and if he's going to just melt those tires and try and get as big of a lead as he can at the start here. But that gap is dwindling down a little bit here and there, but it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out.
Yes, and just looking back through the field, around 13th position there, Oliver Louise, Alan Groff and Johnny Staforos having a mega battle over 11th, and Staforos and Groff going side by side as they head into Mercedes corner in the stadium, first of the stadium sections there, 3 wide into the hairpin. Looks like Staforos is the driver who's going to come out on top. His teammate Manas Poppenblue currently got Dan O'Neill stapled to the back of him as well, so the 2 Greeks there in 9th and 11th position as they head through to complete lap number 2, and a little gap appearing between 2nd and 3rd as well, half a second there between Junt and Legale, but Legale with more pace in qualifying just may be able to hold on here in these opening laps. We Races Rodrigo Cascais holds on to 4th, White Knuckles Bart Wearing 5th, Matt Beavis 6th, and then further back than that it is all pretty line astern as they go through. Tobias Marquez looking behind Tom Watts there for 16th position, but we can see here already a long line of cars developing. We're only 2 laps into the race, Jeremy.
Yeah, absolutely, and we just seen Ferdinand put in a 132.834, so he is running a faster race pace than what quite a lot of the guys were running in qualifying trim, which is very interesting to see. And also we're seeing Dan O'Neill back up to 10th, so we can probably expect to see him trying to fight his way back through the field after that small spin there earlier.
Yes, that's very true. A little bit of an off-track excursion there at the final corner for O'Neill, but now back going again, and with cleaner tyres, no dust or gravel left on them now, can now push on and try and catch his teammate who's currently sandwiching Manas Papanglo for 9th position. David Junt, though, was coming under attack there from Matt Legale into the hairpin. We said about the slipstream playing into effect as a dirty air plays into effect there for Matt Legale through Sachs Curve in this stadium section, and Legale had a look into the hairpin, tried the over and under on Junt, but Junt able to hold a bit better drive and a better line out of that hairpin corner. So Legale's first attempt does not work, and he's now got nearly a second to Junt as he makes the mistake there at Sachs Curve. Already 5.8 seconds is the gap for Ferdinand Lechner at the end of that lap.
Yeah, and Matt does have Rodrigo there trying to chase him down, and we're looking
having
at...
said that, sorry, I know you're behind slightly, and Rodrigo just goes wide there at turn 2 and slides out down into 6th position now. But he's going to be challenging Matt Beavis on the straight, and Manas Papanglo is also going to be challenging Craig Patterson. He moves to the inside into the hairpin further back, and also we've got
looks like we have Matt going for a move on David.
Sorry?
Looked like we had Matt Legale going for a move there on David for a moment, but it appears to have failed.
Yes, so the second attempt not working either for Legale, but that does look like his best attempt at a position as Papanglo looks at the inside of Patterson into the Mercedes arena, and those 2 racing in pyjamas cars are sandwiching that Hellenic Racing Association car as O'Neill now looks towards the inside as they head into the stadium section. It's going to be side by side through there. Both get through. Manos is going to have the inside line, but O'Neill's going to have the wider swooping line, but Papanglo does hold it for now. He's come round to complete lap number 3, and O'Neill looking for the inside into the final 2 corners, very close together, almost a losing of the front end there for O'Neill, but gets through safely and onto lap number 4. But Legale now a few tenths behind Junt, but he's got the run down into turn number 2. Jinx to the inside a little bit, not able to make the move stick, and further back 4th, 5th, 6th and 7th, all very close together as well. So really, as we expected, very close behind Ferdinand Lechner here, Joe.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's going to be I'm curious whether Matt is going to continue trying to push David, or if he's going to kind of settle into a groove here and kind of let off the battle for a little bit and just put in some laps and see what happens, because the two of them battling like this is only going to slow them down and potentially end in disaster. So I'm curious to see if Matt's going to keep pushing it this hard. And it also looks like we do have a pretty good battle going for 4th and 5th at the moment. We've got a pretty good train going there.
This time, Legale up the inside. Can he make it third time lucky here? Goes up the inside and gets through on David Yunt. Can he hold it going into the Mercedes section? Yes, he can. So Legale up to 2nd position, but nearly a 10-second gap between himself and David Yunt here at this early. Between himself and Lechner at this early stage. It looks like Rodrigo Cascais has lost a position there to Matt Beavis. Beavis holding into 5th position as Cascais goes wide again and falls behind his teammate Felisberto as Craig Patterson now looks for the inside as well. So we've got the 2 Wii race cars and the 2 Races in Pyjamas cars locked into the battle together as we move on to the 6th lap at the moment. Over 10 seconds though for Lechner at the moment.
Yes, and as expected, we are seeing some very, very close racing here in the middle of the field.
Yes, and one of those drivers is Manus Pappenglue, who joins this train of teammates. We've got Wii Race, followed by Races in Pyjamas, followed by the Hellenic Racing Association in 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th and 11th. So interesting to see how it's played out like this. Andrea Felisberto leading that train at the moment down towards the hairpin, and Patterson looking at the inside of Cascais, not able to make it as Striforos does a dive bomb on his teammate and gets through on Pappenglue, but not quite able to hold it on the exit. Pappenglue goes back at the inside. I don't think he's going to be making that move again, given how close they were at the apex of that hairpin, but an 8th, 10th gap between LG Racing's Matt Legale and David Yunt there in 3rd position. So Legale stretching the lead a little bit, so now he's probably decided it's time to push and see if he can make it up a bit further as Cascais makes another mistake. He had such a good start, got up to 3rd position at the start, dropped back to 4th on the opening lap, but there he's just dominoed back to 11th position and really struggling here outside the top 10. Struggling on this early race pace for perhaps he's... Oh, and another driver making a mistake. That's Pappenglue, and... Oh, Cascais goes into the side of him, spins on the racing line. Oliver Louise and Christian Zorner have to make evasive action there in the final corner, but Cascais, I don't know what's happened to him, but he's just seems to have lost his rhythm in those battles.
Maybe it's a little bit of the nerves with how close everyone has been for 8-9 laps now, and he's made a few mistakes. I think those nerves are kind of coming into play. He needs to settle it down, take a breath, and kind of fall into a rhythm here. Yes,
of course, these drivers only raced against each other once. at Interlagos as a whole group, so probably still getting used to how each other races a little bit, and perhaps that coming into effect here with how close it is. As once again, before us, passing through there in the Atlantic Racing Association cars, very close together at the hairpin, but they've dropped back a little bit from the two Races in Pyjamas teammates of Patterson and O'Neill, who's currently running 7th and 8th.
Please watch your track limits. Race control are reviewing everyone's track limit, specifically turn 1. If we see drivers continue to track extend, you will be handed penalties. So please stop cutting.
A warning there from race control for cutting track. Obviously very easy to do, as we mentioned in qualifying at the Nord curve and also in the exit to the hairpin. Just running wide a little bit there is very easy to do, but no problems for Ferdinand Lechner. Over 12 seconds now. His fastest lap is over a second quicker than that of Matt Legale, who has pulled over a second over David Young. So Legale now into a good rhythm here in that second position and round on the podium for the moment is David Young. As we see MK Simsport and Racing Pyjamas battling, and Dan O'Neill has spun, and as has Andre Felisberto. There may have been contact there because they were very close on track, but Felisberto's dropping down the field like a stone. He's currently in 18th position, 19th. Will he get out in front of Tobias Marquez? No, he doesn't. So he joins in 20th position here. So a disaster there for We Race, as both Cascais and Felisberto coming to blows here at the early stages.
And we see Dan O'Neill drop back to 13th, so he's going to have to turn around and fight back for all that ground that he made up after that initial mistake just a few laps ago.
Yes, and he was running right behind his teammate as well, and Craig Haas has now been promoted up to 6th position, so Craig doing a very good job to say his PC wasn't working a few days ago, so he probably had a quite limited practice, I would assume. He did say he was going to try and borrow one, so he might not even be on his own computer, so all probably very foreign to him at the moment, but currently doing a grand job in 6th position, a very quick racer in real life and in the virtual world, so doing a very good job here in 6th position, but over a second and a half now between Matt Legale and David Young for 2nd position, but even then there's 13 seconds to Ferdinand Lechner. You've got to imagine that Ferdinand must be doing his tyres good going at this pace. I mean, he's only going a second slower than he was in qualifying.
Yeah, he's dropped the throttle back just a little bit. Like you said, he's only going about a second slower than what he did in qualifying, so I can't imagine his tires are going to last very long. We're already at lap 10, going into lap 11, and I can't foresee him being able to keep up this pace.
No, especially with, as we said, those high-speed corners, and I mean the amount of downforce his car might be producing, as we mentioned earlier. I'm just going to try and compare how they are going through corners, even just to see if there is a difference in setup in that way. If the car does look a bit more planted through corners than even the entirety of the field, so it's possible that, yeah, he's going 3 or 4 miles an hour quicker through some of these corners, so he may be running such a high downforce setup that he's able to put in these laps, but other drivers may have experimented and seen that they'd have to do an extra pit stop if they went that quick. So maybe in the short run it's helping him, but in the long run I can't imagine it's going to be too good for his tyres.
Yeah, he's hoping on just building a big lead out there, getting in that pit stop, and swapping out tires in the pit, and possibly hooking up with his teammate David, and then the two of them kind of putting in work together after the pit stop. I'm not sure, but it'll be interesting to see what pace he's able to maintain through this race.
Yes, now a 1/6 of the way through this race, and still Lechner leads the way from Matt Legale for LG Racing. 3rd position is Lechner's teammate David Young. Bottas rearing up to 4th position after the demise of Rodrigo Cascais, but he's got Matt Beavis all over the back of him as he go down towards the hairpin. Beavis not quite able to make a move there, but ever closer here, and by the looks of it, on the last couple of laps he's been going slightly quicker than Zweering, or certainly only slightly quicker, but even so, reeling in Swearing 6th position, Craig Patterson, who's moved up quite away from the start position. 7th is Johnny Staforos, who's moved up a load of position from the start position. At the end of lap 1, he was 13th, and he's currently 7th, so a great drive for him. His teammates also moved up a couple of positions. Manos Papenglo, as we see, just saw a number of drivers changing positions further down. Just trying to see.
Yeah, we have a battle going for 13th right now between Tom Watts. Well, we did have a battle going for 13th between Tom Watts and Rodrigo Caceres, but it appears that has dropped off a little bit now.
Yes, Cascades, who was in 4th position at the end of lap 1, now in 14th, so not a good start for him at all. And similarly for his teammate Andre Felisberto, down in 20th position, so a very low point score as now Rodrigo makes his pit stop. We're only 11 laps into the race, so you can't imagine that was scheduled unless he wants to do 4 or 5 pit stops. I don't think that was at all scheduled.
Yeah, not unless maybe they're going for a very odd strategy here as far as do a very short stint and then a longer one. And then possibly another real short one, but yeah, I couldn't imagine that's a scheduled stop, even at this point, trying to leapfrog someone or undercut them via pit stop. It's still a little early for that.
Yes, as we see Dan Long make a move at the inside of Manos Papenglu.
Virtual safety car in 5, 4,
virtual
3,
safety car now.
2, 1. Pit limiters enabled. You need to have your pit limiter enabled. It will slow you down to your speed. This virtual safety car is not for a collision or an incident. It is for me to complain at you. Please stick within track limits, specifically turn number 1. Any driver to exploit track limits, and that means going outside of the white lines at turn number 1, will receive a drive-through penalty. So please stay within track limits. The virtual safety car will be lifted in 30 seconds.
And while that has been going on, Lechner into the pit lane, presumably to change tyres already. LG Racing's Matt Legale continues on, as does David Junt and Bart Zweering also coming round towards the pit lane. So we'll see if they also make a pit stop, and Lechner already out of the pit lane. So he's not even lost a position to Legale in that. So he's got fresher tyres and still got the same car.
Virtual safety car coming to an end in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Green flag, green flag, green flag.
I think that was a brilliant move on the end of Ferdinand Lechner there, taking advantage of that safety car, slapping fresh tires on there, maybe even a splash of fuel. Because he did have such a large gap, he was able to take advantage of that virtual safety car and get fresh rubber on that car, and now he can push it again.
Yeah, he's only lost 5 seconds in all that, so of course on the pit limiter anyway, so he only had to use the 4 or 5 seconds for the stop, and that's where he's lost it. So in a way, very, very lucky that he's had the virtual safety car when he was coming around towards the pit straight, but also a stroke of genius to come in at that point, as we see a number of changes of position. Bart Zweering and Craig Patterson getting together, and it's 3 wide as they exit the hairpin for 4th position. Zweering, Beavis and Patterson all together. Johnny Fustoras looking on as well as they go 3 wide towards the Mercedes arena. This cannot end well.
No.
Looks like Beavis backs out of it, but Patterson's going to stay around the outside of Zweering, and he's going to go up the inside, not quite able to make it stick, so Zweering does remain in 4th position. That allows Staforos to get through, and Beavis goes up the inside into the right-hander, into the stadium section towards Sachs Curve, and he gets through as well. So back up to 5th position for Beavis. Patterson in 6th, and Staforos looking on in 7th position, thinking, I can make a few positions out of this, but very close here at the end of the virtual safety car.
Yeah, absolutely. The bulls were released, if you will, and they immediately went to battle. These guys got let go, and they decided to go for it and start pushing like it was the start of the race all over again. And luckily, Beavis did back out of that. He realized discretion was the better part of valor there, and was still able to pick up a place, but decided to pull himself out of that dangerous situation of going 3 wide there. so we can continue to see some good racing.
Yes, one driver who didn't benefit from that though was Johnny Straforas. He's now down in 9th position, so a few positions lost for the Greek driver. Was in 7th position, now down into 9th position, but still on the inside of the top 10. But back at the hairpin, and Swearing locks up hugely there. And Beavis looking to get through. He's right in the slipstream, so you'd expect down at the Mercedes he'd be very close in order to make a move as he goes through the stadium section. Very close between the two of them. Patterson looking on bystander at the minute as Legale holds that 2nd position, but he's actually extended the lead to Yunt, or the gap behind to Yunt, to 4 seconds. So perhaps Yunt slightly cautious on the virtual safety car and putting his pit limiter on slightly earlier than everyone else, and as a result losing a little bit of time.
Yes, and we are still seeing that gap grow between Matt Legales and David Junt, now out to 6 seconds between them. So Matt Legales is still pushing it hard, trying to make up that gap between himself and Ferdinand. And Ferdinand is still, his last lap, he just ran a 1:33.2, so only half a second off of his fastest lap in the race. So with that fresh rubber, he is back on the pedal again.
Yes, and with that fresh rubber now is Oliver Louise, who makes a pit stop from, I believe, 10th position. He's currently in 15th position, but will drop back here a lot more than Lechner did. Of course, everyone else is running round at full speed. He's currently already down into 19th position as he exits his box. Back on the pit limiter at 50 mile an hour, or 80 kilometers an hour, as he comes out of the pit lane and off the speed limiter and rejoins down in 24th as we have a battle for P5. Matt Beavers has gone past Bart Swearing, as has Craig Patterson. Swearing dropping from 4th to 6th in the matter of a couple of corners. Swearing now on the back of that trio.
And that is the 2nd time we have seen that duo pull that off, of Matt Beavis and Craig Patterson. They just did it a few laps ago here. We may potentially be looking at a tentative teamwork there between the two of them, despite being in other teams. They may be working together to try and reel that front pack in.
Yes, of course, countrymen, but not teammates. It's different teams, Racing in Pyjamas and MK Simsport, but all at the same time, countrymen, and holding the nation together at this point in 5th and 4th position at the moment. Now we've got a driver making a pit stop, do we, or a driver off circuit? No. So there's a little bit of moving around, and it's Ronnie Van Rouge who's dropped back to 18th, and Andre Felisberto has gone off the circuit as well, further back down into 25th position. So a little bit of contact there as they head into the stadium section further down the field. Felisberto and his teammate Cascades not having a good race here, and Felisberto started in 7th position or thereabouts, and he's now going to make a pit stop here on lap number 15 for fresh rubber, and probably a little bit of damage that he's been caught up in that incident.
Now, would you expect to see Felisberto possibly make some slight adjustments to the car based upon the performance he's seen so far? Maybe put a little bit more downforce in it? Are guys starting to figure out that that may be Ferdinand's secret, is that he's got more downforce in the car?
Yeah, that's a possibility. I'm not sure what you can change in pit stops. Never run a race long enough in the Formula 3s, or never survived a race long enough in the Formula 3s in order to get to a pit stop. I know you can change the brake bias on the fly, as you can in most modern single-seaters. I've just been told you can change tyre pressures and wings in pit stops as well, so perhaps that is something you can do as well. So maybe Andre also changing a few other things, as we see Frans van der Linden going very slow there, dropped back a few positions. Maybe that was a slowdown penalty, or realised he'd made danger an advantage somewhere around the circuit, but currently down in 24th position, so definitely not going full speed here for Frans van der Linden, or maybe even a flat tyre.
We are seeing Matt Beavis and Craig Patterson chase down David Yunt there, and Craig running only a half a second behind Matt Beavis. So these guys are nose to tailing it up to the front and are pushing towards those podium positions.
Yes, and Patterson round the outside at the hairpin of Beavis, not able to make it stick, but I think more so he could stay behind Beavis and gain slipstream on the next straight as well. Probably not wanting to go through on Beavis, but wanting to stay behind, and he's on the outside again. Beavis holds the inside line and remains in 4th position, but Patterson definitely the quicker of the two at the moment, even without that slipstream. I think quicker of the two I've seen, but Beavis holding 4th position for now.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see here if Patterson, as you said, is quicker. It's going to be interesting to see if he's going to keep pushing this and go for the pass and get out in front of Matt Beavis here and tow Matt Beavis along with him, or if he's just going to sit in the back and turn in some laps.
Yes, one of the two, possibly. I suspect he'd probably be better off staying behind, because they are slightly closing in on David Yunt. Not that it's by a lot, but they are closing in ever so slightly as they pass. Oh, and Swearing's now a spinner. So after having such a good start up to 4th position, he spun at turn number 1. Probably got on the curb on the outside and spun that way, but he's on the inside of the circuit, so an unusual place to land. He's currently down in 13th position, just behind Matt Cook of CM Garage, who we've not really spoken a lot about, but currently running in 12th position at the moment for that team, and regains ahead of Tobias Marquez for Banzai TCC team. So Swearing dropping back to 13th position at the moment, but Beavis has dropped. No, he's not. I thought he dropped back behind Patterson, but no, it's Frans van der Linden, I believe, who's going slowly there. So I've had some trouble with his car there for Frans van der Linden. Not going well at all though for him at the moment. But Ferdinand Lechner now 21 seconds ahead of Matt Legale, and he's been going thereabouts a second and a half quicker on the majority of laps. He's in the 133s, whereas Legale is in the 135s. Meanwhile, on the Towie of the battle for P16, indeed we do. Jeremy Mook ahead of Rodrigo Cascais and Ronnie Van Rouge, who Ronnie of course had the grid penalty, as did Mook, so those two gaining positions, and Cascais trying to regain positions here in the battle for 16th position, and Cascais looking for the inside and gets through. A little bit of contact between the two, but managed to make it stick, and Van Rouge is now going to have a chance at attacking as well.
And as you said, Cascais trying to get those positions back, obviously pushing very hard. However, he is going to need to be careful. I mean, he has had contact more than once now in the race, so he's really going to need to watch himself as far as how hard he's pushing that car and how hard he's pressuring the other guys. He's still got to keep the sportsmanship in mind. He can't just shove guys out of the way. So it'll be interesting to see if he continues to push this hard, trying to make up those places that he has lost.
Yes, it's very easy to get ahead of yourself and try and push ahead of drivers that you know are slightly slower, or you think in your head are slightly slower. And it can be annoying where you think, no, I'm losing time on this corner, and this corner, and this corner, where I could be gaining time to the drivers ahead. But he's got to remember, we're only a third of the way into this race. In fact, even less than a third in the way into this race. So he's got to be careful here. We just saw Bart Swearing making a pit stop. He had such a good start, but a spin on the previous lap, and he's decided to come into the pit lane now. So that would suggest he's doing a two-stop strategy, or perhaps he's just flat-spotted those tyres so badly. It's going to be difficult, as Matt Beavis now pits on the end of lap number 18. So Beavis into the pit lane from 4th position, and that could actually be to escape the battle with Craig Patterson and try and do the undercut as well.
Yeah, that would be my guess, is he's trying to pull off that undercut. We'll see if it works in his favor, as you said, and as I also agree with. I do think Craig is the faster driver here, so we'll see if this undercut plays to his favor or not.
Yes, and it looks like most drivers are on the two-stop strategy here as well. So the two-stop strategy, and I expected the one-stop, to be honest, as Tobias Marquez, looking further down the field, goes up the inside of Matt Beavis, who's just come out the pit lane. Beavis goes ahead of Marquez and goes through into 12th position, but he's going to have a longer line around Parabolica. Once again, they go past Frans van der Linden, so van der Linden continuing despite having the damage, it seems. Maybe his pedals stopped working or something, because it seems like it's in a straight line that he's struggling for pace, but still circulating, hoping he can do the 75% required for the point positions, but currently down in 25th position, so you can't imagine it's going to go too well for him.
And it is honestly quite surprising, despite Ferdinand's pace, we do still have 20 cars on the lead lap, and he is still pushing fairly quickly. His last lap was a 1:34.8, which I believe is his slowest lap of the race, but he is still pushing very hard up front there, now having a 30-second gap between him and his teammate David Junt.
Yes, and Junt has actually gone through as Legale pits, so Legale a third of the way through the race deciding it's time to pit and goes onto the fresher set of tyres. And Patterson in the pit lane as well as Long, and also Johnny Foros in the pit lane, very busy here at the moment. Tom Watts is in the pit lane as Matt Beavis comes out the pit lane in 8th, just behind Matt Cook for CM Garage, but Craig Patterson a number of seconds ahead of Matt Beavis, so it seems the undercut hasn't worked for Beavis, perhaps getting stuck in traffic in this opening third of the race and into the second stint.
Yeah, we are starting to see everybody pour into the into pit lane now. It's become a bit like a traffic jam down there, as you guys are seeing guys coming in and out very quickly. So it does look like the majority of guys are going for that two-stop strategy today.
Yes, which, as I said, surprises me. I've never driven so long that I can manage a pit stop, but I wouldn't expect them to go off that quickly. Obviously, the Mighty Fourth, though, deciding that they can go slightly longer. Davy Junt in particular, he's currently still on the same set of tyres as is, sorry, Matt Legale is not. Matt Legale is the first of the, in fact, no, he's not. Ferdinand Lechner is the first of the drivers to stop. That's another thing you've got to remember, is that while those drivers further back have lost 20-25 seconds in a pit stop, Lechner effectively got his pit stop for almost free, so he's got a pit stop in hand over everyone else, as well as the 30-second gap.
Yeah, and he is going to start seeing those tires fall off a little bit now, but even with that said, he's still putting in high 1:33 lap times, so he's still continuing to be very, very fast, so much so that his last lap is almost identical to the fastest lap of his teammate David Junt there in second place. So he is still continuing to push this car.
Yes, and we've got a battle for P11. Johnny Soforos, who for Hellenic Racing Association has just come ahead of Carlos Alba for Tech 3 Racing, the first of the two Tech 3 racing cars, after his teammate Jeremy Moog had a drive-through penalty, sorry, a grid penalty at the start of the race, but Alba, with the extra speed on the straight line, is going to get back up the inside of Straforos and get back through into 11th. Is he? Straforos is going to try and hold it round the outside. Alba spins out and he's going to be in the middle. Terrell Dahlberg does very well to avoid him, as does Oliver Louis and Dan O'Neill, but Alba on the inside there, perhaps not on the line he was expecting, and putting a little bit too much power down. Spins out and he's now back into 15th position, just ahead of his teammate Jeremy Moog.
Yeah, and as we predicted during qualifying there, these guys are pushing these cars as hard as they possibly can to squeeze every inch out of the car and the track itself, which we've also seen there, as we mentioned, at Nord Curve, with the guys running out of the track limits there. And as you guys have heard Race Control mention twice now about these guys as far as track limits. So these guys are continuing to try and get every little bit they can out of these cars, which again goes to show how competitive this championship is.
Yes, and I think, oh, and Johnny's before us now into the barrier at turn 1. I was just flicking through to see Christian Zorner come out the pit lane, but just before us into the barrier at turn 1, and that is going to be a little bit of damage on the front end for him. Only hit the barrier lightly, but I'd expect a little bit of damage to come from him, and he's just come out the pit lane a few laps ago. And another driver off in the background was there. Tom Watts is off as well at turn 1, so they're all coming to blows at turn 1. And as you said, I think these cars as well in this circuit leads itself to drivers trying harder as and I think that's part of the circuit, is that with these big tarmac runoffs, especially at some of the corners and these big curbs, people are thinking that they've got more room than they have, and really it's about finding that limit and then staying just below it. That is the key here, as David Hunt still circulating with 23 laps gone, so a few drivers still staying out at these late stages.
Yeah, and we do see a lot of times drivers pushing their cars like this to the absolute limit, especially on tracks like you said that have the large runoffs, places like this, as well as Circuit of the Americas, and you know, tracks along those lines where they have the large concrete runoffs. Guys tend to try and take advantage of those, but as you said, it's not a matter of, you know, pushing it out there. It's a matter of holding it just short of that envelope. And those guys that are really good at it can be incredibly fast while still sticking in those track limits, like Ferdinand, who has done a stellar job so far of not only keeping in track limits but running at a very fast pace.
Yes, an unbelievable pace. You might even go on to say a 40-second lead over his teammate David Hunt, who you can imagine has got a similar setup to Ferdinand, perhaps more to his taste, but even so, you'd expect with being teammates they'd share setups within the garage and possibly
that is possible.
A little bit extra.
They also may have possibly went for two very different setups, where Ferdinand went for a very fast setup and David went for more of a consistent setup, and they're just seeing which one works better in this opening series of the race.
Yes, of course,
opening
series
of the championship.
Round. Yes, only the opening round. We've got 4 rounds as well as this one, so plenty of points still to play for. About 10th position, hotting up here for the lower end of the points. Oliver Louis ahead of Tero Dahlberg and Christian Zorner, who only pitted a couple of laps ago but has made up a few positions since the start. Zorner, one of the latest to pit here in the My Nardi car, and currently in that 12th position, so making a few positions up despite running that slightly longer opening stint. He's currently all over the back of Tero Dahlberg. I believe made his pit stop on lap number 17, so Dahlberg now with a little bit older tyres than Zorner, so you'd expect Zorner to be slightly quicker in this middle stint, with possibly a shorter middle and last stint than the drivers in front of him.
And we are seeing Craig Patterson and Matt Beavis back up to 4th and 5th position. Matt Beavis trying to chase down Craig Patterson. So the undercut did not work in his favor. However, if he is able to chase down Craig, we could see them start running nose to tail again and start chasing down Matt Legales.
Yes, but they have lost time to David Hunt. Having said that, David Hunt has not made his pit stop. In fact, now he makes his pit stop at the end of lap number 24. David Hunt makes a pit stop, so you wouldn't expect him to make it to the end with 36 laps to go, but obviously the longest stint, he decided the longest stint was the better way to go. Legale then jumps back up to 2nd position, and it looks like Patterson and Beavis are going to jump back up to 3rd and 4th, and Patterson offered the final corner, in fact. Just as I say that, Patterson making the mistake and going off the races in pyjamas. Beavis, though, goes up to 4th position. Does he get up to 3rd position? It's going to be side by side, I believe, as they go onto the straight towards turn number 2, and Yunt just getting ahead of Beavis. So Yunt remaining in the final podium spot, but definitely not as far as he was ahead of Matt Beavis. And Craig Patterson will be kicking himself for making that little mistake. So it's now dropped in 6 or 7 seconds behind those two.
Now, I cannot see here on my list. Has Matt Legale's made his pit stop yet? He's still out, isn't he?
No, I believe Legale did make a stop. I'm just
He
trying to
did
see.
make his stop?
Yes, lap number 20, I believe. So obviously going for the 20 lap stint, I believe. But he has gained a lot of time on David Yunt, and Yunt now under serious pressure from Matt Beavis. Beavis, obviously the quicker of the two. Yunt still on slightly cooler tyres, having only just come out of the pit lane, so still getting used to the fresher set of tyres that he's got on that car. But Beavis unable to get through for the moment. Yunt holding on to that final podium position at this moment in time as they head through Sacked Curve. But Beavis, we've said it since the opening stage of this race, Beavis and Patterson looking quicker than Yunt, and it now looks like Matt Beavis is making that hypothesis come true here in this middle section of the race, Jeremy.
Yeah, absolutely, and the two of them have been working pretty well together. Craig, as we've seen, had that small mistake there, which, as you said, he probably is very much so in that car, wanting to kick himself for that. But he is still holding that 5th spot and does have a fairly good gap back to Dan Long, who is sitting in 6th. But Matt is definitely trying to put the pressure on David there to get around and get that podium spot.
Yes, and all important positions and points to be gained for Matt Beavis even at this early stage, and more points off the mighty 4th as well, which you'll be hoping for considering the 50-second gap that Lechner has. And just looked at the timing, and in fact he's now lapped up to 11th position, and he's only a few seconds behind 11th position as well, which is an extraordinary feat given that we're not even halfway through the race.
Yeah, when only 10 laps ago we still had 20 cars on the lead lap, so he has lapped 10 cars in as many laps, essentially, with the pace that he's running. Even slowing it down a little bit, he has slowed it down about a second from what his average pace was a little bit ago, but he is still just blasting around this track in comparison to everyone else.
Yes, just looking at lap times, 134s for Legale. In fact, he's similar to Legale now, but that's with him dropping back a second a lap and overtaking lap traffic. So an extraordinary drive here. He's now behind Oliver Louise for Kinga Racing, and you'd expect, Oliver Louise running out wide there to let Lechner through. So that's now 10 drivers he's yet to pass before he's completely lapped the field. At this pace, you'd almost half expect it. He's 50 seconds ahead on a
He's got to slow down.
Lap. Yeah,
he's got to let this pace go, and not just for the tires for the car itself, but also for himself. We're not even halfway through this race yet, and I would have to think that either he himself is sitting there thinking, or at least the rest of his team is thinking, just calm it down. You've got plenty good enough gap. Just settle down, get into a groove, slow down, and take it easy. You've got this in the bag. Just stay consistent.
Yeah, and even at this early stage, we can say that, relatively early stage at least, where we wouldn't expect to be saying that yet until the last few laps, but at this point you can't say that with 50-second gap. And just looking at his lines here through the corners, I mean, at the turn 1 he's taking the entirety of the curb on the left, clipping the curb on the inside at the apex, and they're running it out just so the car's halfway across the curb on the outside. I mean, it's just inch perfect lines the entire way round, and that seems to be the difference between him and everyone else, as well as that slightly differing setup, is that he's able to run these laps not only consistently, but each lap it's just equally just inch perfect.
Yeah, and he's only losing a second and a half to traffic here per lap or so. His last lap was a 1:35.2, and Matt Legale's put in a 1:34.5. So he is losing a little bit of time to the traffic, but even with that, as long as he stays consistent and doesn't, bin it into the wall, I don't really see a way of Ferdinand letting this one out of his grasp.
Yes, and you'd think these drivers, by the way, are not slow at all. I mean, a 1:33, 1:34 is a very quick time around here, but it seems these few at the top are just aliens compared to everyone else, and he's just making even 10th and 11th place look like they're standing still and pulling out a second or two per lap on everyone else, which is an extraordinary feat. But
yeah, these guys are not slow by any means. I mean, when you go back and look at, when we did qualifying, there was only a second in between from second place all the way down past 10th place. So these guys are incredibly competitive, but Ferdinand has just been able to get it figured out here today.
Yes, and I've just noticed Matt Beavers has dropped back down to 5th position here, behind Craig Patterson and David Young. So whether that was a mistake or a bad pit stop, it looks like it was a mistake on the previous lap. He was 6 seconds slower than his fastest lap, so that is probably where he's gone in that. And Steforos once again making a mistake. The Hellenic Racing Association driver now down at 16th position. He was as high up as 6th position before his pit stop, but he's now dropped back down to 16th here. And the two Hellenic Racing Association drivers are not having a good day here, 16th and 20th in, well, a race at the start where they were running in the top 10.
Yeah, it appears, I would assume after this race that team is going to be sitting down and having a few thoughts on some race theory and what they can do to improve this throughout the rest of the series at this point, because obviously they have the pace just based on where they qualify. So now it's going to be a matter for them to figure out the race strategy and to keep that those positions where they qualify.
Yes, and that's very true. I mean, you can one thing qualifying, but holding that pace for 60 laps is very, very difficult. And it seems only one or two drivers can accomplish, and very few can master. As Ferdinand Lechner now puts a lap on Terrell Dahlberg, who's running in 10th position, by the way, but currently goes a lap down on our leader. But once again, Craig Patterson and Matt Beavers, they're like they must be magnetized between the two of them, because they are so together.
And we are also seeing a battle for 14th there between Carlos and Matt, very, very close to each other.
Yes, Tech 3 Racing's Carlos Alba currently running in 14th position, Matt Cook in the CM Garage car in 15th position, and Matt, the only one of the CM Garage cars on the circuit, so in the Teams Championship he's got things rather stacked against him. And in fact, Matt was on the reserve list for this race, but brought in last minute in order to race. So doing a stellar job here in 15th position, just behind Carlos Alba, currently running 14th and 15th position. But as we said, Craig Patterson goes wide at the hairpin. Very quick run into the hairpin and goes wide, and they're now side by side between them. Matt Beavers on the inside line for the right-hander, but it's going to be outside for Mercedes. Can he keep it there? That is the question. Or run it around the outside? No, he can't. He has to let Craig have the position for now, as they have a spinner in front of them. I think that's Matt's teammate, in fact. No, it's not. I was about to say it's Matt's teammate Dan Long, but it's not. I believe it's one of the Hellenic Racing cars. Maybe it's not even one of them. I'll forget about that. Matt Beavers currently in 5th position here behind Craig Patterson, but still unable to find a way through. He did get through when Craig made that slight mistake after the first pit stop, but for now, staying behind. Talking to pit stops, you'd expect Ferdinand Lechner to make one, considering quite early.
Yeah, I would think he's got to be coming in fairly soon. Granted, he has given the tires a little bit of a relief, slowing down, going through traffic and so on, but he has been on those tires for quite a while now, and he was pushing very hard. So yeah, I would expect him to be coming in very soon.
And of course, given that he's done 10 laps at the start-ish, and then 20 laps on this, you'd expect him to do another 20 and then 10 laps, but perhaps he's hoping that if he can do 25 on this one and 25 on the other, he can omit that last stop and still stay on the two-stop strategy.
Yeah, and we are still seeing Matt Beavers and Craig Patterson going at it. These two seem to be just perpetually locked in battle here today. They are living Groundhog's Day inside of their cars right now. and it's making for some great racing.
Yes, Patterson staying ahead for now, but MK Simsport running 5th and 6th, and Dan Long is actually, I believe, catching them very slightly. 135.3 on the last lap for Long, compared to Beavis's 136, so a few attempts taken out of his teammate that time round, so it could work out into a 3-car battle for 4th position. And at the rate they're going, they may even catch David Junt as well, who's, in fact, David's running 134s now, so going much quicker than he has been previously.
And we do, further down the field, we have Steve Legale's, Matt's teammate in LG Racing, trying to push for the 18th position there, but it looks like he has dropped off a little bit now. He was trying to work his way back up the field. Obviously, his teammate Matt is doing very well, sitting in 2nd right now with a 20-second gap between himself and David Junt.
Yes, it looks like a slight mistake for Legale on that previous lap. A 140.5 compared to his 135s and 136s that Legale has been running, so a few seconds off on that last lap, and Papanglu perhaps a quicker lap on that last lap as well. I just saw a bit of moving around, and yes, Carlos Albert into the pit lane from 15th position, so he was battling with Matt Cook, so Matt has now been released from that battle, and Albert into the pit lane with 33 laps gone. Just having a look, seeing when he made his first pit stop. It looks like it was, I'm trying to see, has he made a pit stop yet? He must have done.
Yeah, at this point, everybody's had to have done a pit stop. We're just over halfway through the race now. Just based on fuel alone, everybody would have had to have stopped by now.
Yes, so the second pit stop then, it seems, for Carlos Albert. Just trying to see when his previous one was. I believe it was on lap 22, so if that's correct, that's only an 11 lap stint, so perhaps some damage to the tyres. Flat spotting perhaps in this game is a thing, so perhaps that was part of it, or maybe part of his strategy call that his team decided he need to pit now. But either way, Albert back into 18th position at this moment in time, just ahead of Legale and Breslin. So Legale looking for the inside, but not quite able to make it, and Breslin, who is the teammate of David Junt, currently running in 20th position as well.
And it is kind of surprising to see such a large gap between Matt and Steve Legale, with them being teammates, as we were talking about earlier, with having similar setups and so on. It is surprising to see such a large gap in between them, and it was very much so the same in qualifying. So if they are using the same setup, there may need to be some inter-team discussion as far as technique when it comes to this one, because there's obviously a large difference between the two driving styles here.
Yes, of course there are always going to be slight differences in driving style as well as driving pace here, but you think between the teammates, especially in the case of Matt and Steve, who are related, of course, as you may have been able to tell from the same last name. Yeah. It's not just a coincidence, they are in fact related. Or they may, after this race, have a look at each other's driving style and try and improve it. As Breslin now looks for the inside into turn number 2 and makes the move on Legale. Legale, very gentlemanly there, doesn't try and turn in on Breslin, instead trying to get the pace onto the straight. In fact, he's going to get a glorious run through Parabolica and towards the hairpin, and you'd expect Legale to make a retaliation move into the hairpin. He's being given an invitation here to take the position back. Can he get it through? No, not quite. But Breslin does lock up there, so Legale may have a chance into the next couple of corners. But for now, it looks like Breslin has held that position in 19th position.
Well, that was a very smart move on Legale, letting him by. He knew he would have the run coming down into the hairpin. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to make it stick, but that right there is, showing you racecraft and strategy. Letting the car by, knowing that you'll have a run going into the next corner. He didn't bother fighting it. He knew if he goes by, I can get back by him coming into the hairpin. So that's racecraft at play there.
Yes, and that's all sometimes that's more important than racing quick. There's drivers that can do hot laps, but the drivers that do racecraft and hot laps together are the drivers that are the quickest. But if you've only got one of them, then you're not going to be at the front. But Lechner showing both of them there, showing racecraft and speed as well to get up the field, as German Grand Prix, I believe, making a pit stop now. That's his second of the day.
We also just got word from race control that Craig Patterson has received a drive-through penalty for exceeding track limits. So again, we are still seeing guys pushing those track limits, and we are starting to see the hammer come down from race control on that. Craig Patterson, who was running right up there with Matt Beavis, as he was earlier, has now received a drive-through penalty, and it looks like he's serving that now.
Yes, just come out of the pit lane ahead of Dan O'Neill's teammate. So the two racers in pyjamas cars once again, as they were early in the race together. A little bit of time between them at the moment, but as the times, there you go, 2 seconds as the times correct themselves, and Patterson now down into 6th position. And I think now a warning to all drivers that if you do exceed those track limits, that the race control are going to put the hammer down and give out the warnings. But Matt Beavis now 13 seconds ahead of Patterson, so Patterson not lost too much time, but at the same time will be kicking himself again for running wide somewhere and picking up that penalty in the first place.
Yeah, he does now have a slight benefit of having his teammate right there to work with and possibly being able to charge back towards the front, but we're now getting down towards the last third of this race. I expect we're going to see guys start pushing it a little bit harder after this next set of pit stops that come in. Guys are really going to push hard here for the last third of the race and try and pick up those last couple of spots to get those all-important points.
Yes, and with just 5 rounds here, every point counts more than in a series with, say, 20 rounds. You can afford to have a bad round once in a while, but here with just the 5 rounds, you've got to make sure every round counts. And the driver doing that at the moment is Ferdinand Lechner, who has got a 51-second lead over the rest of the drivers. 6 drivers now on the lead lap as Patterson now pits again. So Patterson now pitting for probably a scheduled pit stop.
And we also get word from race control that Matt Beavis has also received a drive-through penalty for track limits. So we are still seeing Matt Beavis and Craig Patterson kind of almost mirroring each other today, as Craig Patterson drops back to 9th as a result of that, what seems to be a scheduled pit stop.
Yes, you'd expect he'd want to get the drive-through out of the way and then decided, right, well, I'm having a bad part of the race, I may as well put on some fresh boots to get to the end, and that is exactly what he's done. He's come out behind a lapped car there, so going to have to negotiate him, so not the best of positions to come out in, but either way has now made his 2nd pit stop. And we also saw Terrell Dahlberg making his stop there. Was running as high as 8th and 9th, but now dropped back down into 11th position after the pit lane, just ahead of Johnny Straforos and Oliver Louise, who running for Kinker Racing, they're in 13th position. But now 6 drivers on the lead lap only, so Lechner showing his pace here at the front, as Beavis has not made his drive-through yet, so the first lap deciding not to make it, possibly trying to go a little bit further on.
Yes, and I was just going to mention that Ferdinand has slowed down a little bit, moving through traffic, but as you said, only 6 cars remain on the lead lap. So Ferdinand working his way through all of this traffic, showing his pace, and we'll see if Matt Beavis, after serving this drive-through, is going to be able to work his way back up to that top 5 position. He's not going to have very long to do it, so he's really going to need to push, especially since he still has another pit stop to make.
Yes, and talking of pit stops, Ferdinand Lechner has just made his 2nd one, and presumably his last one here, with 22 laps remaining, so Lechner now on course to go right to the end, and that will have brought his gap to Matt Lechner down to 49 seconds at the moment, but I suspect it'll go down a little bit further once the times correct themselves further around the lap at sector 1. But Lechner in no worries now. With those tyres, he can just relax to the end with 134s and 135s consistently through the board. As Matt Beavis now pits for, presumably, his drive-through form 4th position. So perhaps we'll do a similar thing to Craig Patterson, because he will be getting near his 2nd pit stop as well.
Yeah, I would have to assume that he's going to come out and probably come in the very next lap and just get it out of the way so that their pit stops are done. It's just the final charge to the end of the race.
In fact, Beavis has now, does his pit stop now. So I suppose he's doing the opposite way round to Patterson. So for once in a while, the two drivers have been stuck together the entire race are going to do the opposite to each other. And Beavis now into 6th position. So Dan Long and Dan O'Neill go through on the two drivers. So the MK Simsport and the Racing Pajamas cars go through into 4th and 5th position. Beavis rejoining there, as I said, in 6th position.
Yes, and we're still seeing a 40-second gap back to 2nd place from Ferdinand. So as you said, he can drive comfortably now and just put in consistent lap times and kind of take this one home. But it is not over yet for sure. We still have 20 laps left to go here, and anything is possible at this point. So he really needs to kind of button down and just keep it under control. As for the rest of the field, they need to do the same. And as I was saying earlier, we're probably going to see guys start really pushing it hard here for the last third of the race, seeing if they can make up those last couple of places.
Yes, this last 20 laps are going to be all important to making positions. The majority of drivers still have to make a pit stop as well, so that could throw another spanner into the works, as Dan Long now pits, as I say that, from 4th position. So the MK Simsport team having to do another pit stop for now Dan Long, as he comes in and stops at his box, goes up on the jacks for presumably tyres and fuel. And someone has been, and Beavis has now been disqualified, presumably for not serving his drive-through. So Beavis has now gone out of the race and joins a list of drivers who will not finish this race. There's still 21 drivers remaining, but he's now one of the drivers who will not continue in this race and disqualified, so he'll be at the bottom of the pile as well. So any chance of points or any chance of a good position are absolutely gone now.
And there it is, we do got word from race control. Matt Beavis has been DQ'd for not serving his drive-through penalty as a result of exceeding track limits. So,
as was said in the driver's briefing and twice during this race as well as drivers reminded through grid penalties from the race at Spielberg and Interlagos, these drivers need to be careful about track limits, and it seems only a few drivers were able to get through without any incident, but one of the drivers that has slowly creeped his way back up, very much under the radar, as Dan O'Neill now pits from 4th position, is Rodrigo Cascais from We Race. He started 4th, made a good start and tried to get alongside Matt Legale into turn 1, wasn't able to make the move stick and then dropped down to as far as 26th position after the first pit stop, but now back up to 5th position and running well in 5th position.
Yeah, absolutely. He's definitely made a very, very strong comeback here, and it's great to be able to see a driver. As we were talking about earlier, he was kind of able to clear his mind, just put his head down and start turning laps, and as a result of that, we see Rodrigo back up to 4th position.
Yes, and as a result of a few drivers pitting, of course, but still, he's probably in 5th or 6th position overall as well. And as one of those drivers is Matt Legale, who's pits now, so he did have around 30-40 seconds to Lechner. How that is going to stretch to, I would think, over a minute now as he comes into the pit lane, and David Junt will go back past him. David did pit quite late. That was lap number 25 where he pitted, so he's still got a little bit to go until he probably pits, but I don't think Legale can be too concerned, because I wouldn't think that even on fuel, let alone tyres, that David Young would be able to make it with 35 laps in his second stint.
No, I don't believe so. I think Matt will be able to come back by him. David will have to make another pit stop.
So Matt does not have much to worry about there. He can just continue round, and he's only 11 seconds behind David anyway, so he's not going to have to worry about David getting out of the pit lane in front of him, given that the pit lane is about 25 seconds in length. But there's now 3 drivers on the lead lap, which is an extraordinary feat for Ferdinand Lechner.
And as we say that, Ferdinand puts in another purple lap at 1:32.675. So
wow.
He is pushing it harder than he has the entire race with 42 laps completed.
That's extraordinary. It does look, and Patterson is out with an engine failure, so Craig Patterson mirroring Matt Beavis in, well, I presume disfortune there. I can't imagine that that is through the fault of his own. I imagine just a simple engine blow up, perhaps shifting down too far, putting it into neutral, an unfortunate place, but the engine has gone on Craig Patterson's car, so perhaps an incident somewhere on the circuit that we didn't see. But as you said, Ferdinand Lechner with that purple lap, 1:32.675 on lap number 42 of this race. And in fact, on lap number 41, it looks as though he didn't set a time, so perhaps maybe that's just a timing glitch, or maybe it's because he's run off circuit and the lap's been made invalid, so maybe he is pushing so hard that his laps are being made invalid as well.
Which really surprises me that he's pushing it this hard. He does not need to. He's taking an unnecessary risk at this point. I can't say that I agree with this strategy of pushing the car that hard. I mean, he's less than a second off of his qualifying time with that lap time, and faster than the qualifying time of second place today. So I'm not sure why he's pushing so hard this late in the race when he has a almost 1 minute lead.
Yes, and the other thing as well is that, as well as that he doesn't have to push this hard, it's also the fact that with only going 4 tenths slower on that lap as well, he's able to do this consistently and almost at will. I mean, he already had the fastest lap points that go with the pole position points and the race points that he will, well, at this point we could say he'd probably inevitably pick up. So there's no need for him to go quicker, as David Junt now pits from second position into the pit lane. The pit lane limiter goes on, and the mighty fourth driver, I will imagine, in fact I can confirm now as Legale crosses the finish line, will drop back to third position again, but still a good showing from Junt in order to get through into third position. Question is, where is Dan Long? Dan Long still yet to make the stadium section, so Junt in that third position, and is going to remain in that third position.
And you know, we talk about Ferdinand pushing it this hard this late in the race, and possibly he's not. For all I know, this could feel like a Sunday drive to him right now, and he's that tuned into the car right now that he's really not pushing it that hard. It's easy for him at this point. I'm not sure.
Yes, and you'd imagine with the pace he's showing, he's just coming up on cars like they're standing still behind Steve Legale at the moment, and he's just going to breeze past in a straight line. I would imagine Legale will probably, gentleman as he is, will probably move to the side as well in order to let him through, and indeed, yes, he does brake it slightly earlier in order to let him through. He tries to get the run actually, so trying to follow as Thomas Parsi as well, who we've not really spoken about too much, but did have that pre-race grid penalty from Interlagos, and that's going to give Steve Legale, in fact, the run down to the Mercedes arena. Parsi goes wide. Does he? No, he doesn't. He managed to clip the apex, but Parsi goes round in a circle, and that's allows Steve Legale to get up to 18th position. So Parsi running out of road there, and slightly too hot on the throttle, and he runs wide through that corner.
Yeah, it looked as though he was feeling that pressure from Steve Legales, and it got the better of him.
Yes, he was trying to defend, I think, as well into that corner, and just a little bit offline, and wasn't able to do much about it in the end. But looking down the field, we've got a great battle for 7th and 8th position. Tobias Marquand for Banzai TCC and Rodrigo Cascais for We Race. Coming into the stadium section, Cascais just behind Marquand at the moment, but will inevitably make a move at some point in these late stages, especially with the pace he showed in qualifying and at times he's shown in the race.
Yeah, I'm actually a little surprised to see Rodrigo Cascais drop down that far as a result of his pit. I would have expected him to come out around 6th or so, as he was running up in 4th. So he does have a little bit of ground to make up there, and I'm sure he's going to be pushing it pretty hard with 14 laps, 15 laps here to go before the end of the race.
Yes, and another driver on a recovery drive is Bart Zweering, who looks to the outside going into turn 1. On the outside, Matt Cook, that's going to be awkward. He rightfully backs out a bit at that point, but he's going to get the run down towards turn 2 and may have the position as they head onto the back straight towards the hairpin. Indeed, Zweering goes back up to 10th position, so another driver who started well but dropped back in the middle part of the race and is now on a recovery drive at these late stages. Zweering now back up to 10th position, but he's not over yet as Cook goes to the outside in the CM Garage car looking for the 10th position, and he's going to get it at the moment, but Zweering will have that inside line and holds it as a result, having the tighter line and therefore the more respected line into the corner and goes through. So Zweering up to 10th position for White Knuckles Sim Racing.
And we do see Rodrigo Cascais move up to 7th, so he is indeed trying to charge back up to that top 5 position that he was holding.
Yes, and he's not actually got too far to go to Taro Dahlberg. Dahlberg crossing the line now as Rodrigo exits the final corner, so only 4 or 5 seconds, and with these lap times that he's put in, 1:34 for Cascais versus a 1:35 for Dahlberg, with 15 laps to go, he's got a very good chance of getting that 6th position, and I wouldn't think 5th position, but certainly 6th position he's got a good shot at.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we were talking about earlier, you know, this being the opening round, obviously every point possible is incredibly important for these guys. So it is getting down to the last little bit of the race here. So these guys, all, as far as I can tell, everybody is done with their pits. We shouldn't see anybody else coming in for a scheduled pit stop. So now it's just a matter of pushing for the last 14 laps or 13 laps here to the end.
Yes, and those big pushes will be now starting to come in as the drivers think about those extra points that they can be gaining from that driver in front of them. And in the case of Tero Dahlberg being closed in every lap here, Dahlberg, the only driver in the Ajira racing team, and doing a very good job at the moment, in 6th position at the moment. He's come up all the way from the back of the field, so an extraordinary drive from Dahlberg. If I'm just trying to think about where he qualified, he must have qualified right near the back, given that he was 27th after lap 1, so it's just been a huge upwards battle, but brilliant drive for him to get back up to 6th position.
Yeah, it's a great show of, you know, not only is speed important, but consistency is very important. You know, the age-old saying, in order to finish first you must finish. You know, Tiro, we haven't really talked much about. He qualified fairly low in the field, but because he has been very, very consistent throughout the race, he now sees himself up in 6th position, and, you know, in some decent points now.
Yes, as Oliver Louis now makes his 3rd stop, I believe that is. Just looking through. Possibly 3rd, maybe? Yes, looks like his 3rd stop. He pitted on both laps. Number 15 and 33. So it looks like the last of the scheduled stops for him in order to get to the end of the race. Runs wide into turn 2, but back on circuit now in 12th position. And that's allowed Bart Swearing, who we were talking about earlier, to get up the field a little bit further as well.
And we are starting to see that push from Dan O'Neill. He has whittled that gap between himself and Dan Long down to a half a second now, so he is really starting to push to try and get into that number 4 position.
Yes, these last 12 laps are going to be all important for Dan O'Neill, trying to be the better of the Dans here with 12 laps to go. And once again, MK Simsport and Races in Pyjamas locked together in battle regardless of the drivers it is. And this time it's MK Simsport that have the upper hand, but Dan O'Neill, with the draft coming down into the hairpin. Only a slight draft from that location, but he's got a slightly higher speed at the moment, reaching 150 miles per hour in the draft down towards the hairpin. And at this point, Dan Long is going to be very, very worried at this point. I've been in the same position where you've got a quicker driver behind you and have to defend for the last 10 to 12 laps. It really is horrible, but you've got to stay in that position, and especially where the cars are the same, it makes it even more difficult.
Yes, and I would expect to see Dan O'Neill here really pressure Dan Long, and maybe not necessarily go for the move, but peek inside here and there and try and pressure him into a mistake for these last couple of laps, and then go for the move on the last lap or second to last lap or so. But for now, I foresee him just kind of sitting back there and really putting the pressure on, seeing if he can force Dan Long into a mistake.
Yes, and for now it seems like that is his strategy as we run on to lap number 48 now of this race. The leader's already on lap number 49, but we're going to discount him for a moment as Dan Long once more under attack from Dan O'Neill. Ever closer, and we're getting very close in that braking zone in fact, so concertinaing up into this section, and at this point only a few tenths behind, and he's even closer as they go onto the straight towards the hairpin through the parabolica, and this time he's going to get even more slipstream as they go towards the right-hander over 150 mile an hour, but not able to make a move this time round. O'Neill goes through though as Dan Long makes a huge mistake under brakes, and O'Neill on the inside as they go towards Mercedes, but Long, if he can hold it, will have the inside line, but he cannot. Will he try and make a move into the chicane as my computer completely freezes at worst possible time? Oh no. I'm just trying to catch up with what's happening. I believe O'Neill is still in front.
O'Neill is still in front. He does still have about a half a second gap now to Dan Long.
Dan Long still in 5th position, and my computer is completely... I'm getting about 1 frame every 10 seconds, which is not good at all.
Well, as we predicted earlier, we are seeing those pushes, especially here with Dan O'Neill and Dan Long. So these guys are going to be scrapping it out for the last 10 laps here, and expect it to get very chippy here over the last couple of laps.
Yes, unfortunately, I still can't see anything. It's currently frozen, so I'm going to have to try and reconnect it for the final 10 laps. But as you said, Dan O'Neill and Dan Long very close together on circuit.
And it looks as though Dan Long has dropped back a little bit. He's now a second back from Dan O'Neill, so he may be pulling the pressure off a little bit, kind of setting himself up to prepare for these last few laps to really push it hard.
Yes, and apologies for that. I'm going to have to restart the game in order to get back in, but I should be back in for the last 10 laps. It was Lechner who was well ahead of the rest of the field from Legale and Yunt, with the two Dans battling for 4th position. Unfortunately, I cannot see that at the moment, but hopefully Jeremy can fill you in a little bit better as well.
Yeah, we are still seeing Ferdinand Lechner up front with almost a minute-and-a-half gap at this point. He has slowed it down a little bit. Last lap was a 1:34.395, so he is coming off the loud pedal a little bit, trying to calm it down some, but obviously has a massive, massive lead at this point. He just needs to keep it on the gray stuff, and he has got this one in the bag. But again, nothing is set in stone here. We still have 9 laps to go. Anything is possible. And we are seeing that gap between Dan Long and Dan O'Neill spread out a little bit now. We're seeing 2 seconds now in between them. So it appears as though Dan Long has backed off a little bit, but we are seeing Rodrigo Cascais push on Tiro Dalberg pretty hard here, under a half a second gap. So Rodrigo is really pushing for that number 6 spot in the final few laps here.
Yes, Rodrigo was right there at the front of the start, but dropped back partway through.
And Rodrigo is going for the move here on Tiro, and he has gotten by. Will he make it stick, though? Now, as we were saying earlier, as the race winds down here, we are going to see more and more moves like this. Guys really pushing for that final spot they can get. So it's really going to start heating up here in the last 7 laps that we have left. And Rodrigo is still pushing Tiro Dalberg all the way through the circuit here, going side by side. It's going to be interesting to see how this unfolds. And further down the field, we are also seeing Jeremy Mook pressuring Manos Papanglu. He is 0.2 seconds off of his rear right now, so Jeremy Mook also pushing for another position. He did have that grid start penalty at the start of the race, so he is trying to make up as many positions as possible. And Rodrigo is going for another move. Still trying to make this stick and get by Tiro. Alright, so he has made it stick. So now Rodrigo is going to be on the defensive for the last 7 laps here. And as you can probably guess, Tiro is trying to pressure him, but he is dropping back a little bit here. Gap is already up to a second, so Rodrigo is trying his best to run away at this point.
And I'm back in the game now, so I can see what's happening again. And as you said, Rodrigo Cascais has broken away from Tiro Dalberg a bit with just under 7 laps to go. Ferdinand Lechner now nearly lapping third position, as David Yunt comes around the Sachs curve now. But Dan O'Neill has now got ahead of Dan Long and has broken away. So a few seconds between the two of them here. We've got just 19 drivers remaining in this race. We've got Lechner leading from the Galley, O'Neill, Long, Cascais, Dalberg, Marquardt, Zwirning, Albert, Louise, Breslin, Cook, Papanglu, Mook, Van Rouge, Legale, Hazy, and Jean-Pierre Père round out your 19 drivers at the moment. A number of disconnects, a number of disqualifications, and a number of engine blowouts have halted a number of drivers here, most notably Craig Patterson and Matt Beavis, 2 drivers who got disqualified and had an engine blowout. So very unfortunate for them. See, Beavis didn't quite make his penalty in time, and for Patterson, well, we're not quite sure what happened. We believe it was just a simple engine blowout that halted him and his charge for third position, but at the moment third position is held by David Junt pretty comfortably in that third position, as Dan O'Neill and Don Long also comfortable in their fourth and fifth position. Looking down through to see a good battle unfold between Carlos Alba and Oliver Louis. Oliver Louis currently in that 11th spot behind Alba. Started relatively high up, did Louis, but now trying to make his way back up the field. Alba there in 10th position. His teammate Mook, who had a grid penalty at the start, started near the back of the grid, but is now back up to 15th, so great drive for him as well, as Louis looking all over the back of Alba into turn number 2, but as we've seen so many times before in this race, staying behind for the moment. He's going to have a good run down to straight, already gaining leads on the driver in front, and he's going to go for the outside, which is going to be the shorter line around the corner. Alba defending the inside even at this early stage, but Louis is going to cut across his nose. Alba's going to try and switch back and try and get the better run out the corner, but unable to do so, and that is now Louis into 10th position. Louis making the move up into 10th position and reasserting himself within the top 10, with Alba dropping back for Tech 3 Racing. Looking back, seeing if there's any more battles happening on track. I think that's one of the closest here in the closing stages, between Oliver Louis and Carlos Alba. But Louis making a move there, Jeremy, up into 10th position.
Yeah, absolutely, and we are still looking at 20 cars still in it, although it looks like David Van de Veen has retired into the pits. He is still in there, however, but we have 19 cars still in the race. That being said, we only have 3 cars still on the lead lap, that being Ferdinand Lechner, Matt Legales, and David Junt.
Yes, an extraordinary drive by those top 3. Even just to stay on that lead lap of Lechner, given his pace. I mean, just looking at him through one or two of these corners is just, it's like chalk and cheese compared to everyone else as he goes past Mark Breslin, the Mighty Fourth Racing teammate, and he goes up into another car battled and another car passed with ease. Granted, they are given blue flag, but it's still difficult to make moves. Stick around here as he comes down towards the hairpin for what will be the 53rd time of 60.
Yes, and we're looking at only a handful of laps left here, and at this point, obviously on Ferdinand's mind is that he's got the race in the bag. It's just a matter of finishing these last couple of laps. But for the rest of the guys in this race, what do you think, Peter? Do you think these guys are looking at Ferdinand like, wow, he's made a statement here today, you know, we have someone to chase, or are these guys thinking, well, it's, you know, he got lucky at this track, we still have other tracks that we're better at?
Well, I think it's a bit of a two-edged sword here, really, because Lechner was very quick at Spielberg at the timed laps. He was over a second quicker than everyone, even at Spielberg, which is only a 1 minute 23 second lap for the top runners. But then at Interlagos, he was, you know, he qualified in about 10th position. He still went on to win the race, but qualified in 10th position. Granted, it was a slower race, but sorry, it was a shorter race, but even so, qualified quite low down. So I think really it's a mixed bag, whether he just had an unfortunate qualifying at Interlagos and wasn't able to get a lap in. I'm unsure, but even so, I think a very bold statement here at this opening round, and one the other drivers are going to have to step up to when we get further on in the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we're coming down to the last few laps here, you know, Ferdinand Lechner is still looking at over a minute gap to Matt Legales, who is sitting in second there. So at this point, aside from any huge catastrophe, I don't see any way that he could not come home with the W in this one. But as you said, not only has he made a statement, I mean, it's a very commanding statement that he came out here not only to win, but he has dominated here today.
Yes, and given that we've only done 53 laps and he's only a minute ahead, that's an average of over a second a lap ahead. Of course, he did have that sort of free pit stop though, with in the middle of the race, so maybe that did help him in the virtual safety car. But even so, at this point in the race, he's not cruising, because you can see he's all over the circuit, and well, not in a bad way, but all over the circuit as in perfectly hitting those lines every single time. But sometimes I think getting out of a rhythm and slowing down can be detrimental to a driver, because they know with those laps that they can push that hard, and it's just those 2 or 3 laps that they slow down for. And I think Matt Cook just made a slight mistake there, dropping back slightly. He's dropped behind Manos Papandreou, so Papandreou back up into 13th position for the only remaining Hellenic Racing Association car. Matt Cook into 14th position, so a late position change for Papandreou, moving ahead of Matt Cook.
And I do have to say, it was very impressive today, the cleanliness of the race. We did have a few drive-through penalties handed out for exceeding track limits, but we did not see a whole lot of contact today. Some light bumps here and there, but no big pileups. We made it through turn 1 especially, and the entirety of lap 1 very, very clean. And that goes on to speak to these guys' professionality and their ability as drivers. Even in real world, it is very rare that you see a lap 1 go that cleanly. So again, it just speaks to the quality of drivers that are here in this championship.
Yes, that's a very true statement to make, and especially at a turn 1 like this, where it just narrows down into virtually one line through there, and if you're an inch off line, you lose a mile per hour or a kilometre an hour in speed, and in racing terms, that's a lot of time lost. But to have the patience to get through lap 1 and then battle on afterwards, I think just shows the, as you say, the professionality and also the care that these drivers have taken, given that this is a 60-lap race, and given how fast these drivers are going. And I believe Lechner is now on his final lap, so this looks like he's gone down to a timed race. So Lechner coming through the Mercedes section one more time, and what has been a dominant drive here at Hockenheim, as we see Tobias Marquardt making a pit stop here. Very late pit stop, very, very late pit stop in fact. Very surprising to come in at this late stage, and it looks like it was a drive-through in fact, so perhaps exceeding track limits there at the end of the race. But Ferdinand Lechner coming through the final section of this circuit to complete the lap and complete the race, and Ferdinand Lechner is the race winner here. So he takes the win here ahead of what will be in about a minute's time, and that's no exaggeration, Matt Legale and then David Junt. And Junt is actually very close to Legale here in the closing stages, only a few seconds between them. So Legale with another mistake might even drop behind Junt as well, but Lechner, an incredible race there to lead it from the start. No one challenged him. An extraordinary drive to take the win here in round 1 of the RaceDepartment Grand Prix Championship. Good through, and Dan Long, that's Dan Long finishing there in 5th position, so he goes through and scores a well-deserved 5th position. Rodrigo Cascais will hold on from Tero Dahlberg to take 6th position. Tero Dahlberg coming across in 7th position. Looks like the next driver to finish will be Bart Rearing ahead of Tobias Marquardt. Rearing coming through the final 2 corners, taking it nice and steady. Wouldn't want a a mistake now as, oh, Carlos Alba, an engine blowout on the final lap of the race, and goes
And
right
that
through.
is heartbreaking.
That is so unfortunate. He will score the points though, because I believe it's 75% of the race you've got to complete. So that is unfortunate though. Rowan crosses the line in 8th, 9th is Marquardt, 10th will be Oliver Louis. Alba would have been 11th, will probably drop back a little bit though, given that he won't have completed that lap. Papaglou, a few celebrations there for finishing 13th.
Congratulations to everyone on finishing. You did an amazing job. That was some good watching there. Please may I have in race control, however, Dan Long and Manos Papangelo. Could you please join me in race control now, please? Thank you.
So a number of drivers being taken to race control following the race, presumably for disobeying track limits. Having a little word to them at the end. But how would you rate that race, Jeremy? We saw some interesting battles and really some very good racing.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously an incredible race from Ferdinand Lechner. As you said, you know, led the race from start to finish with a commanding lead. I really have to give it to Matt Legales as well. Very, very consistent today. Great drive from him, as well as from Rodrigo Casillas, or how I keep butchering his name. I apologize for that. He had a great drive today, made a couple of mistakes, dropped pretty far back in the field, but he was able to make that up and really show that he's potentially a force to be reckoned with here in this championship.
But that is going to conclude our opening round here of the Race Department Grand Prix Championship. It's been great watching this race. Me and Jeremy thoroughly enjoyed it. A little bit of a hiccup in the late stages, which unfortunately messed up my timing, so I didn't know when the last lap was. But other than that, a great showing from the drivers, and well done. And we'll see you in 2 weeks for the following round of the second round, I should say, of the Race Department Grand Prix Championship. But for now, goodbye.